Hey,
some of my best work.
Welcome to the AFC South Fan Battle Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Matthew Briggs, because Sam is in the best state ever, Texas, so she can be with us. Tonight, we got a special guest, but before I introduce him, let you introduce the other guys. First off, representing the Texans, we got Mr. BT. What's up, bub?
What's going on, guys?
And representing the Colts and the official Sam Warnett fan club, we got Chris Jackson.
Whoa, hey, why all that? Okay, I just speak it how it is. Sam loves Jalen Ramsey. What? Why am I getting flack for that?
And since we got a special guest, we're going to bring two Jags fans on. Representing the Jaguars fan battle, we got Mr. Cody Blankenship.
How's it going, everybody?
And guys, he also does the Jaguars fan battle every now and then. But your mom's favorite, Josh Allen.
That's right. And yes, that's my real name, as I've said many times before. I had it here in Jacksonville long before the Josh Allen here in Jacksonville. But I would like to introduce our guest, Matt. So I'm going to interrupt you. One of my absolute favorite broadcasters here in Jacksonville, covers the team. He is. Let me read through all his bona fides here real quick. The host of Jaguars Today on 1010XL, game day co-host of Jaguars Radio. And he's on Football Diehards on Sirius XM Fantasy and Sirius XM NFL. Mike Dempsey, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Been listening to you for a long time, man. We just appreciate your time very much.
Oh, thank you, guys. Am I to understand there's no Titan representation here? I mean, I really appreciate that. That's fantastic. We can all agree on that, right?
Amen. Yes. Titan fans are crying in their mayonnaise, Mike.
Yeah, we're a little tired of the mayonnaise joke, so we're like, you know what? We'll take a break. So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
They're
not here.
It's a good day. Yes.
Yes, since they're not here, there's a Hellman's Fest in Nashville right now. So 9 times out of 10, they're all
more Dukes people. I don't know if they're even. I don't know if they're Hellman's.
Yeah, I think Hellman's got canceled, didn't they? Or didn't they go out?
Something, yeah. So they're going bankrupt or something. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, yeah. Well, Mike, go ahead, Chris. Or Josh. I'm sorry. Josh,
so Mike, tell for people who don't know, just give us a brief synopsis. How long have you been covering the Jags, and how did you end up covering the Jaguars? A little bit about you and who you are.
All right, a brief history of time. Started doing radio in the mid-'90s in college, kind of early '90s, I guess. Worked for an AM station in St. Augustine, which for folks who are not from the Jacksonville area is just down the road south. And went to the locker room covering the team for the first time in the 96 season, and it covered about half of those games, and covering them back then was just simply, I'm the one at the station who cared enough to ask for the press credential, and I got to go and then go to the locker room and try to do interviews on this little old tape recorder that I had back in the day. So I've been there as somewhat a member of the media since at least 1996.
So you went through all the hard times, huh?
The good times too, though, man. I mean, 96, pretty good year to break in as a Jags reporter or fan.
That's when my family moved to Jacksonville, and I became a Jags fan. When Morton Anderson missed that kick, I was sitting on the floor of my parents' house they had just bought, and we had moved everything in, but we hadn't set anything up but the TV because my dad wanted to watch football. And we tuned in. I saw the teal color. Remember the long starter jackets they used to wear on the sideline?
Oh, yeah.
Bro, I was in love. I was like, yep, this is my team now. Here we go. So
y'all know the story about Jackson DeVille, the Jags mascot, and that kick, right? The Morton Anderson kick.
Oh, yeah.
Jackson
I know it, but I don't know
shaking,
if they got it.
He was shaking the uprights, and the referee, and literally the uprights were swaying a little bit, and the referee kind of scolded him, and he thought they were going to let him re-kick it, and he thought that was the last day he'd ever work for the Jaguars organization. Obviously, the history turned out a little bit differently. So
yeah, that's one of many rules they made in the league, for mascots because of Jacksonville, who's the greatest mascot in the history of the league. He is though.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. You're outnumbered. On this
we got him outvoted.
So you're an expert on the Jags. We know that you cover them all the time. What are your thoughts on the rest of the division? I'll start with my favorite glutton for punishment, the Titans. People try to tell me, especially Titans fans, that the Titans are still a contender and that they're still good. I'm not convinced. What say you, Mike Dempsey?
Look, I think the Jags have a clearly better roster. I really do. But you can't ignore the position that they were in last year. If we're trying to be realistic and level-headed about it, I mean, they're running away with the division mid-season. Ryan Tannehill gets hurt. I do think that Mike Vrabel has a team that knows how to win ugly. And if they sign DeAndre Hopkins, they're going to be a lot better off skill position-wise than they were. I still think Derrick Henry has another big season in him. I love the fact that we're hearing Malik Willis is out playing Will Levis so far this offseason, which just tells you everything about Will Levis that you need to know. But look, I think the Jags are the better team, but let's also not deny that in Week 18 last year, they picked a quarterback up off the street that never even got in on the field for the Jags when he was a backup there in Joshua Dobbs, and had the game in hand with the lead with about 5 minutes to go. So I think, historically, Jaguar fans are probably wanting to beat their chests because of all the pain that the Titans have caused them in the past. But to me, they're clearly the one team that if Jacksonville stumbles, if they lose some of those one-score games like they did early in the season last year, that's the team I think has the best chance of hanging around and contending in the AFC South.
Yeah. I hate to agree with you because I hate the Titans, but
I don't like to say anything good about them either, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if I'm giving you my honest opinion, I think the Jags are clearly better. I think the Jags should win the division by at least a couple of games, but the Titans will probably be that team that we look up and we're like, how are they 7-4 right now? They don't do anything special, but they know how to win ugly.
Yeah. What do you think about the Colts? A lot of people, including Chris Jackson, believe pretty hard in Anthony Richardson. Me being a Gator fan also, I'm not convinced. So I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, honestly, I wonder if this year they wouldn't be more competitive if they started Gardner Minshew, who, has a way of keeping teams in games in the National Football League for the most part. But I think Richardson has unlimited ceiling. But is he going to see that potential realized right away? I think that's a big question. I think the thing that the Colts have going for them is they've got a number of their frontline players who had down years last year. Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, Shaq Leonard are three guys who just going into last year would have been considered among the very best at their position in the National Football League. And they all had disappointing years. So I think their hope is that those guys bounce back to some semblance of what they think is normalcy. But look, we did watch Anthony Richardson, and he does make the spectacular plays. But as you saw, Josh, I mean, he'll miss the wide open guy who's 10 yards right in front of him as well. Now, they said he's looked good throwing from the pocket this offseason, different things. And he's going to be an interesting guy to watch. I know a lot of people in Jacksonville know Denny Thompson, who works with 6 Points Jacks, who trained both Minshew and Richardson. So there is some Jacksonville connection there. I think they're a team, though, realistically, that is probably a couple of years away from getting back into contender status.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't know. What do you think of that, Chris Jackson? Do you agree?
I don't think that's an unfair assumption, if we're being honest. I think going into it, it's just like for a fact that Richardson is somebody who they know has unlimited potential, but he's also somebody that you're not just going to throw out to the wolves, have him throwing 50 to 60 passes per game. The great thing about it is that you do have a Jonathan Taylor to lean on. You do have those guys in those different positions where you're not going to have to go super hard, with Anthony Richardson. And I mean, I can see them kind of bringing him along the same way you saw like what they did with Jalen Hurts. They gave Jalen a little bit of control with that offense last year. And I mean, the Eagles didn't have the best year, but, they ended up, making it to the playoffs somehow. And then you see this past year where they went to the Super Bowl, just kind of bringing him along, providing him weapons. So I think with Anthony Richardson is the perfect quarterback for the long game that they're looking to play. I mean, even if this year, if they go 5 to 6 wins, I think honestly, it's just not a bad year if you're going and you're making sure that you're hitting those milestones that you see to make sure that he's progressing the way that you would like him to.
And if I could jump in, just, let's realize last year with a very aging Matt Ryan, they split 2 games with the Jags. And the thing I've been preaching a little bit is worrying about the opener, right? Week 2 is the home opener against the Kansas City Chiefs. And we remember back to 2018, the Jags felt like they should have gone further and gone to the Super Bowl. They were eyeing that Patriots game. They went on the road to play the Giants, and they really struggled and won an ugly game. But you play the Colts in week 1. You have no idea how they're going to utilize Anthony Richardson. Is he going to be the full-time starter? Is he going to be a sub-package player? Are they going to put Minshew and Richardson on the field at the same time? So I think somewhat of the element of surprise. And, I have confidence that Doug Peterson is going to have his team ready to play. This is a different regime, but it's human nature to have that look ahead when you've got the world champions coming in the next week. So if they win that opener by a point, Jaguar fans should not be disappointed whatsoever. Any win is a good win in the division this year.
Yeah, I agree. What I don't want is a repeat of when the Jags beat the Patriots at home. I was in the stadium for that game, and then it's like they thought that was the season, right?
Yeah,
and they you had Jalen Ramsey handshaking, Blake Bortles on the sideline like they were best friends, and then 5 games later, like the wheels had fallen off and chaos ensued. So that's what I hope does not happen this year. So the only team left in the division is the Texans, and the Texans made the mistake of drafting a quarterback from Ohio State, who never been out in the league. So I'm curious your thoughts on how do you think the Texans are going to do this year, Mike?
I think, Josh, you're kidding a little bit because, people bring that up all the time. You can't draft a Penn State running back because look at this guy. And then, along comes Saquon Barkley or Larry Johnson, right? I mean, the mold gets broken. So as far as C.J. Stroud, where he went, I mean, you watch that college playoff game against Georgia and you're like, man, this guy is, it's surprising in some regard that he didn't go number 1 overall. But to me, the more surprising move is all the draft capital they gave up to get Will Anderson with the number 3 pick. And I thought it was an overpay, quite frankly. I mean, he's going to have to turn out to be TJ Watt to be worth what they gave up. I just don't think the Texans right now have the roster. But again, head-to-head versus the Jags, they've been a thorn in this franchise's side, no matter how good the teams have been in any given year. So I'm not discounting that they can give Jacksonville a problem in any given week, but I am discounting that there will be a serious playoff contender in 2023.
I'll chime in here just for a second and just say, obviously, Josh, I know you're joking, but I know some people, even Colin Cowherd has talked about C.J. Stroud coming from Ohio State. And then, you always have to think about, they said the same thing about Texas Tech and they got Patrick Mahomes. Same thing about Wisconsin. You got Josh Allen. You got to evaluate the talent, not the school. And you have Ryan Day that just came into Ohio State. So you really can't judge Ohio State quarterbacks really because it's basically under new management. So I agree, though, with you, Mike, that I don't consider us to be serious playoff contenders this year. But I will say that if there was one team that I think the Jags should be worried about, I would actually say the Texans. And I'm not to be a homer, but I do think that I can't remember another team that has actually made the amount of changes that the Texans have made in one offseason: quarterback, pass rusher, head coach, OC, and not to mention the other position groups. So, I don't think there really hasn't been another team that has made such a vast difference, both on the field and as well as the coaching staff in one offseason. So do I think that we're a playoff threat? No, but I think we're getting close. And I think in 2024 is when you're going to see us really be contenders in the division.
Yeah, the only real game last year we got blown out, of course, was by the Jaguars. Was it like 31-3 was the final score? 31-3. Or something like that. So my thing is scheming fixes everything. And the Bobby Slowick and D'Amico Ryan scheme fixes a lot of problems that Pep Hamilton and Lovie Smith caused. So I think it's going to be a lot closer, but I can only see maybe 6 to 7 wins. But I do think we split with everybody except the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars gets our number this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, Texans have a long way to climb up from, earning one of the top 3 picks in the draft and selecting twice. So, they added a lot. There's no question about it. But, you talk about teams turning it over like that. I mean, every time you get a new head coach, you get new coordinators, and if you are in position, look 2 years ago. I don't want to wish this on you. I mean, because we like the quarterback we got, but the Jags had a new head coach, whole new staff, new quarterback. That didn't work out so well. So keep D'Amico Ryans out of the bars in Cincinnati.
Hopefully D'Amico Ryans don't kick. Hopefully D'Amico Ryans don't kick Fairbairn, and we'd be all right.
That's funny,
man.
All right, so I think we'll probably just I'll let Matt take over because he's technically the host. I've just been super excited to.
You're doing a great job.
So I think we'll just go. person by person here. I know everybody's has some questions that they sort of prepared. Cody, I'll let you take a whack, man. What do you got for Mike? What do you want to pick his brain about?
Yes, this is a real serious question. When the Jags win the Super Bowl this upcoming season, how are you going to celebrate?
Hopefully I'll be in the parade. I'm going to ride on. I'm going to be having JP Shadrick give me a piggyback ride down Bay Street. I think is kind of my goal with that one. But I mean, look, just the idea right now. I know you're being a little bit facetious. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, right? But I think Jaguar fans are at a point now. You've never had a quarterback on the ground floor that is already at the age of 23 being considered one of the top 6, 7, 8 guys in the league with room to grow. So, I mean, I think, when you talk about Super Bowls, Jag fans have never been to one, obviously, but they've been to several AFC championship games. And I think if you were to poll Jaguar fans, they would think if Trevor Lawrence plays the majority of his career in Jacksonville, let's say the next 10 to 12 years, that they're going to get the chance to win maybe more than one. I'd love to, I have no idea. The answer is, Cody, how I would celebrate, but probably I would do it without a voice because you can imagine what that post-game show is going to be on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things listening to you on the radio is how excited you get. So quick story about this. Like I came down to Jacksonville about 11 years ago, and I worked at a dealership. So every time I got into a truck, 1010 was on.
Nice.
And so you became the voice of the Jaguars to me. So I'm just fanboying a little bit.
I appreciate that, man. Look, in all honesty, we don't take ourselves that seriously. We try to take what we do seriously, but we realize, I'm just a lucky guy, man. I mean, there's plenty of guys that could do what I do, and I have put in the time and the effort, and it's not like I don't take my job seriously, but at the same time, I mean, we play in the toy store of life, when it comes to a career. So knock on wood, I appreciate that. I appreciate all you guys and anybody who, spends any time listening to the program. I mean, without that, there's no point in what we do.
Yeah, exactly. So you host a fantasy podcast. So I had a question about the AFC South. Who is a dark horse player for this upcoming fantasy season in the AFC South?
All right, let's see. Who is a dark horse player? I've been drafting like crazy too, and
is that a league you have filled up yet?
I've got over 130 drafts done for this year already. So I mean, I like that. That's half of my profession is doing fantasy football on Sirius XM, and obviously playing in a lot of leagues. Look, I don't know if the Jags are dark horses necessarily. I'll go team by team. How about that? I'll say for the Jags, it would be Tank Bigsby, right? Because look, Trevor's expected to do great. ETN's going in about the 4th round. Calvin Ridley goes in about the 4th round. Christian Kirk a couple of rounds later. I mean, you could point to Zay Jones, but he had 82 catches last year. I don't know how hidden he is. And Evan Ingram, presuming he's in at the start of training camp, should have another solid season. So I think Tank Bigsby has a chance, not as a every week starter, but a guy you'd roster, see if he gets the goal line role in Jacksonville, becomes a bit of a pass catcher out of the backfield. So I would put Bigsby for Jacksonville. I mean, it's low-hanging fruit for the Titans to say Chigakonkwo, the tight end, because everybody loves his talent. But outside of him, there's not many guys. Treylon Burks, Derrick Henry's going in the early 2nd round, if not the late 1st round. So he's not a dark horse. I don't look at Tannehill like that. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins comes there. He's a well-known commodity. But Okonkwo, the tight end, a lot of people think he'll break into that top 10 to 12 range of tight ends this year. I think it's probably Nico Collins for the Houston Texans. It's kind of a crowded receiver group there with Robert Woods. We don't know what John Mechie is going to look like. Brandon Cook's moving on. I think Tank Dell's an interesting dynasty prospect, but I don't know if in the short term that's going to amount to much. I think it's probably harder to come up with one for the Colts because, Michael Pittman is clearly the alpha receiver there. Jonathan Taylor still goes in the 1st round. So maybe Alec Pierce, if you're looking a little bit further down the depth chart there, or a Jelani Woods at tight end too, at 6'7", kind of an intriguing dart throw late in drafts. If you're not drafting Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews early, that might be a direction you look to add a couple, like an Okonkwo and a Jelani Woods. So those would be one from each team that I would say would be dark horses.
This is why you get paid the big bucks, man.
My wife laughs like you get paid for this. Like I was doing this anyway, man. You want to pay me? Sure, I'll do it. I don't mind.
That's the dream, right?
It's fantastic, man. I mean, that you want to talk about the Toy Store life. The NFL's serious business. It's big money. Fantasy football. Are you kidding me? That I've been doing this now for like 13 years. We started out doing a show once a week with Maurice Jones-Drew back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And MJD got on the radar. If you guys remember, it was against the Jets when he goes down at the 1 yard line purposefully. So the Jags could run the clock down and Josh Scobie could come in. The Jags were down by a point, I believe, and he kicked the game-winning field goal. So there's still a little chip shot. And MJD stepped to the podium after the game. This is still in an era where a lot of players kind of look down their noses at fantasy football players and didn't realize how much popularity it would add to their own bottom lines. And MJD apologized to his fantasy owners. Yeah. And the Fantasy Network had just launched on SiriusXM, and they're like, we got to get this guy a show. And I had previously done a show in Maurice's second year on 1010 in Jacksonville. So, he said, I'll do it if I can do it with Mike. And thank you, Maurice, for opening the door. We probably did, I forget how many years, the two of it. We probably did about 6 seasons, but I started doing a show called Football Diehards with a guy named Bob Harris, who is a legend in the business. And we've been going for, honestly, probably close to 13 years now. So knock on wood.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, amazing work. All right, VT, what do you got?
Yeah, I would like to know what player or position group are you most worried about, and why is it Trayvon Walker?
Well, I don't know honestly if it's Trayvon Walker that I'm most worried about, but I think pass rush is clearly the position group for the Jags that you got to be worried about. I mean, depth at cornerback, we don't talk about it enough. Hopefully Darius Williams plays well opposite Tyson Campbell and they figure out the nickel position. Antonio Johnson may be an option there. Trey Herndon probably penciled in right now. But, I mean, look, they just simply did not affect the quarterback enough. And you could talk about pressure rates all you want. You got to hit the quarterback. You got to get him on the ground. And I think there's much more pressure on Josh Allen than there is on Trayvon Walker. Allen's supposed to be the established guy. He's going into his 5th-year option season. If he wants that $20 million a year payday, I mean, to me, he hasn't been anywhere close to worth that level of compensation. But you look at Marcus Davenport, who had 1 sack last year for the Saints, but has shown flashes in the past. He got $13 million from the Vikings this year. So Allen's going to get paid, but if the Jags are going to be the team that pays him, he's got to step up and he's got to have his most productive season. They lose Arden Key in the division to the Titans. DeJuan Smoot, these are 2 of their top 5 sack guys, 2 of their top 4, actually. They didn't have impressive totals, but they haven't really replaced them with anybody that's proven. So I've been beating the drum for Justin Houston. He only cost Baltimore about $4 million last year, and he had 9.5 sacks coming off the bench. A lot of these guys who are available on the market right now, like Yannick Ngakoue, don't see themselves as reserves. They want to be starters. So I've been pounding the table for months to go bring in a guy like Justin Houston. I hope they still do it, but clearly pass rush is the biggest concern for the Jags, for me at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Worst performing unit comparatively to other teams across the board, was the pass rush last year, and they performed worse. Yeah. So, all right, Matt, you got any questions for Mike?
Yeah. So we've been doing some YouTube shorts as a network as a whole, and we've been asking people who is the one player from your divisional rival that you would take on the Jaguars. So if you can have any player from any team in the division, who would it be?
Based on, like Jonathan Taylor's a great player, Derrick Henry's a great player, but I love the Jags running back room right now. So I wouldn't take that. I probably would take Quentin Nelson, to be honest with you.
That was my pick.
Great player, and the Jags are okay. I mean, Tyler Shatley played fine last year when he took over for Ben Barch when he got hurt. And, it's already talked that when Cam Robinson comes off the suspension, maybe Walker Little kicks inside to guard or at least competes there. But if you had a guy like Quentin Nelson, you just lock down the middle of your offensive line. And look, I don't care what he did last year. He's still one of the probably 2 or 3 best guards, with apologies to Zach Martin, who may be the best in the National Football League. So that's who I'd poach.
All right. Good answer.
All right. Chris Jackson.
You're on mute. Very good, sir.
You're muted, buddy.
Oh, wait, hold on.
He's good.
He's doing his Samantha Burnett.
I thought
He's
you
doing
were
a Samantha
mine.
Burnett impression.
But you see that the Jags ended up just being successful this past year. Now, you see that they do have some flaws here and there, and that's fine. But this team has never been able to string together consecutive winning seasons. I know that they had like a great season years and years ago, and then they went 8-8. And then I think the following year they were back above 500. What about this group right now lets you know that that consecutive streak of not being able to string together back-to-back winning seasons is different from what we've seen previously?
All right, first, before Cody and Josh get all upset, 96 through 99, Jags made the playoffs every year for 4 straight years. So there is that, all right? But since the turn of the century, they haven't gone to the postseason in back-to-back years. There's no denying that. But it's obvious. You go back to 2017. The defense scored so many touchdowns that year and really carried that team. And they got all giddy and gave Blake Bortles a contract extension, and he was never the guy, just never the guy. They had crucial games where they wouldn't allow him to throw late in the game in that season. You've got not only Trevor Lawrence, but you've got a head coach who is just totally respected throughout the organization, who's shown that he can get the best out of quarterbacks. I mean, Carson Wentz was playing at an MVP level in 2017, and then he goes down, and Nick Foles comes in and leads them to a Super Bowl championship. When you've got the raw material of Trevor Lawrence to work with, and the head coach, that combo, I mean, that is why Jag fans are giddy right now. All the rest of the pieces can go away, and they will over the next 10 years. There'll be new guys coming in, the old guys going out, and as long as you've got that combo, I think, and plus, you look at the schedule this year, and, apologies to the rest of the teams in the division. We talked about where they stand at the moment, plus you play the NFC South, which is one of the weakest divisions in football.
Yeah.
You have a chance to fatten up. You get Kansas City at home. You get Cincinnati at home. You get Buffalo losing one of their home games to play you in London, where you already have been acclimated playing the week before. There's no excuses for this team not to succeed this year. And I think the biggest thing, though, is you've got to avoid the slow starts. What they did last year, starting 2-5, just losing 1-score games and making critical mental mistakes. You had the interception in the end zone against Houston. You had the one against Denver. And Trevor Lawrence, I think, really kind of turned the page and grew from that. Now, are we going to get the exact same Trevor Lawrence that you got over the second half of the season, just duplicate that over a full year? No, he'll have a few bumps along the way, but I think the gulf between Lawrence and the rest of the quarterbacks in the division is a massive gap. And it's the most important position in sports, arguably, certainly the most important in the NFL. So I think that's what has every Jaguar fan expecting success, not only in 2023, but like to get on kind of that late 90s run where you feel like when you show up at the beginning of the season that, hey, we know we're going to be a challenger for the postseason. So let's put ourselves in the best position to have some home games, do things like that. So we'll see. The schedule's favorable this year, but it's the quarterback head coach combo that has me the most confident and excited.
That's what feels the most different this year compared to other winning seasons they had. Like coming into that season after the playoff run with Blake Bortles, everybody sort of knew if they were being honest, that Blake still wasn't the guy. And it was, are we going to get good Blake or bad Blake?
Right.
Right. And then when the defense, which was really what held that team together the year before, fell off, you saw that Blake Bortles was not, just like you said, he was never the guy. So it feels different this year, but
there is one thing that Trevor Lawrence is not the greatest in the division, and that's handing the ball off. That belongs to Ryan Tannehill.
Yes.
He hands the ball off.
He does do it beautifully. He does do it. Got to stay healthy to hand it off, though. And I'll tell you one other thing, because his name hasn't come up yet. I mean, if Calvin Ridley is anything close to what he was the last time he played a full season, and I mean, boy, you've just taken your number one wide receiver, knocked him down to your number two, and so on down the line.
And he had a great year last year too. So I mean,
last year, his last full season.
No, I'm talking about Christian Kirk.
Kirk. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Kirk,
yeah.
I think, shut a lot of people up who didn't think he was worth that. Honestly, I think Jaguar fans were more surprised at the money Zay Jones got than the money Christian Kirk got. But Zay was phenomenal. I think you're super confident. Again, got to have health. If the offensive line plays decently, Trevor gets rid of it quick, he's going to help that offensive line. I mean, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, ETN, Bigsby. I mean, I think Dearness Johnson was a heck of a pickup, honestly. And I don't see how he's going to see the football very much if everybody stays healthy. But I think the pieces around Lawrence are exciting.
Yeah, and it's crazy because going into last season, a big contingent of Jags fans were still calling for Trent Baalke's head. Like, people were saying the guy's terrible. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's signing all these players. Like, people were very unhappy with the way that the team was being run in terms of, just all the players that were on the field. So it's interesting. It's crazy how quickly the tide turned in terms of like opinion on Baalke and how he's doing things. So I have a question. To change gears a little bit from football to the proposed eighth wonder of the world that the Jaguars have put out there over the last month or so. What are your thoughts on the proposed stadium renovations? Good, bad, indifferent?
Toilet bowl.
Look, obviously good. You'll be calling it that, and it'll be your house of horrors for the next. Look, there's no not doing it. Okay,
right?
The alternative to not doing it is not having a football team. That's after 2030. That's the bottom line. And I look, the Titans are building a brand new stadium, and they've got like $1.2 billion of public money being put into it. The Jags in Jacksonville are being asked for $1 billion in public money. Look, Shad Khan, if he really wanted to hold their feet to the fire, he could say, I'm not putting a penny in. This is what you have to do to keep me here. But he's willing to help build up that area. And look, obviously I'm biased here, right? For my career, for my desires, what I enjoy doing, I want that team to stay in Jacksonville. But to me, it just makes zero sense unless you're just an absolute old curmudgeon who hates everything joyful in life. Like, why would not you want to transform your city? Look, the big thing is where are they going to play if they get an agreement done. But if we're worrying about that, that means they've got an agreement done. So if they want to play in Daytona, fine. If they want to play in Gainesville, fine. I'll drive to Tallahassee. I'll drive to Orlando. I don't want them to be in Orlando. I think it would probably come down to Gainesville or Daytona. I don't think any of the facilities in Jacksonville, it doesn't make sense to put another $150 million into, the baseball grounds and expand it to 25,000 seating. It makes no sense to me. So, I want it done. The Performance Center will be open for training camp. I think that will get people excited. They'll see the state-of-the-art facility that's there where the Jags are going to practice now, and they'll say, okay, hey, you know what? This is kind of a taste of what they're trying to bring here to the First Coast.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It had the one thing I wanted, which was finally some shade from the god-awful sun. It's a miserable experience. I sat at that Houston home game last year, and someone had spilled ketchup all over the aisle in front of my seats, and it was baking in the sun, and it smelled terrible. And I said, what I wouldn't give for a small bit of shade in a slight breeze right now. All right, Cody, we're going to give Cody the honor of having the last question, Cody. A lot of pressure on you, buddy. So
last question.
Let it rip.
So who has impressed you the most as far as the rookies go? And I know that we've only seen OTAs and stuff like that, whatever. But
yeah, I mean, look, I think the most potentially impressive player is going to be Anton Harrison. But knowing we've only had mini camps and OTAs and there's very little contact going on, you can't stand out as an offensive lineman that much. You don't get many one-on-one pass blocking reps and things like that. I would go back to Bigsby. Just because and again, I think he'll really shine when you get into training camp and you put the pads on because he's a physical runner. But what's impressed me about him is he catches the ball away from his body with his hands. Right now, Jermichael Hasty may be the primary pass catcher out of the backfield, but you want your backs to have the ability to be complete players. And he's shown an ability to kind of pluck the ball out of the air and have soft hands. And again, that's very small sample size. The way they practice their schedule coincides with us being on the air. So with the exception of training camp, I can't be out there at every practice. That's why we rely on so many local reporters like we do. But Bigsby's and the funny thing, I've asked, and you guys know all the locals, Hayes Carline at our station, John Shipley, Demetrius Harvey, Mia O'Brien, and I asked them all, you're out there every day. Who's impressed you? And I think every single one of them said Bigsby was the most eye-opening. So I'll have to just pile on with that.
Yeah, I watched some of his highlights, and the things that he did behind that horrible Auburn offensive line was just insane. So yeah, I have a feeling that he's gonna make some plays.
Certainly hope so.
Yeah.
Yep, me too. Long live the Jaguars, and everyone else can, go jump in a lake. Mike, where can people find you? Where if people want to follow you and learn more about you, your shows and what you do, what's the best place for them to follow you at?
Do I need to look? Okay, like no one's behind me right now. Like, literally come and find me. All right. You can find me on 1010XL Radio, 1010XL.com if you're not in Jacksonville. 10:10 a.m. or 92.5 FM, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday with Tony Smith, who's a phenomenal co-host. We just, E.T. just moved off of our show. He's been a great producer for the last 3 years. Dylan Denmark's our producer now. And, in season, we've got David Garrard and Tom McManus and Jeff Loggeman and Donovan Darius and John Ozier and Mike DeRocco and all these guys who are on every single week with us. So we think we bring you some really intense coverage there. Right now, Saturdays, you can find me at late Saturday afternoons on Fantasy Sports Radio beginning the 17th. We kind of go to our in-season schedule. So I'm on Monday nights, Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday evenings on Fantasy. And then when we get into the season, we simulcast that Saturday show on NFL Radio. Occasionally over at fantasyguru.com, mostly in season, I do a fantasy podcast that comes out every Wednesday. And you can follow me on Twitter for now, as long as it still exists, at MD_1010XL. And occasionally here when you guys invite me. I appreciate it.
Hey, man, you are welcome anytime, buddy.
I will say this to all of you. I really do appreciate it. I know not everybody here is from Jacksonville, nor everyone would want to be in Jacksonville. I understand that, your wrong-headed ways. But for the guys who are, you know how to get in touch with me if you want to come hang out and, sit in the studio when we do a show sometime. We'd love to have you. So if you have an open invitation,
awesome.
Just get in touch.
I don't foresee myself ever going to Jacksonville based on humidity and all other factors. But you know what? I'll take you up on that offer if I ever do.
All right. If you ever do. We got a seat on the bench for you right there.
All right. Well, we'll just close it out here. VT, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Brown Chubby Bear. You can find me on Threads with the same username, Brown Chubby Bear. We have a show of the Texas Fan Battle podcast. That's every Wednesday. This week, we're actually going to be on Thursday to accommodate our guest, Jeremy Branham from ESPN. So check us out on Texas Fan Battle podcast.
All righty, Matt Briggs.
Same as VT Wednesday nights. Texas Fan Battle, everywhere on Twitter, Threads, whatever app it is. You can find me at A1 Day 1 Texans. There's so many of them, so that's the handle.
All right, Chris Jackson.
You can find me at CJ Coltsfan on Twitter and Threads, and also you can find us on the Horseshoe Mob Podcast Tuesdays 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be live this week with special guest Clyde Oliver from the Sick Podcast, or the formerly the Anvil.
Sweet. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Josh Gives Up. That's probably the easiest place to find me. And last but not least, Cody.
Find me at Cody Cold Gaming and at the Jags Fan Battle Podcast. We're live Tuesdays at 8. And we would love to have you on, Mike, if you want to come on that one as well.
You know how to get a hold of me, so
yeah, man, that's awesome.
Just shout out.
Sweet. We appreciate it once again, Mike Dempsey from 1010XL, a co-host of the Jaguar show. So this wraps up what may be the greatest episode we've ever had in the history of this podcast because it's heavily Jaguar related. I think, Chris Jackson, there's only one thing left to say.
Oh yes, as with anything, the sky is blue, water is apparently wet, and Sam loves Jalen Ramsey.
Amen. Catch y'all next.
About to be the clash of the Titan, strike like a lightning bolt. You feel the ground pounding, that might be the coast. Quick like a joke, like to hit when provoked. Don't you doubt that, that's a Jaguar, do a